Welcome to Beyond the Main podcast. We're here at JSerra. We are more than just a school. We are more than teachers, coaches, and administrators. We are a community striving together to grow in faith, intellect, and character. Each episode, we will talk to a member of the JSerra community and get a deeper look of who they are as individuals and their expertise in their field. Thanks for joining us, and if you can, please like and subscribe. Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of Beyond the Main podcast. I am your host, Russ Abdulla, and today joining me is the one and only Bella Holsten.
Hello, nice to be here with everybody.
It's great to have you. Bella, tell our, let's jump right into it. Tell our viewers what do you do here at the school?
What do I do? So I'm the campus minister at JSerra. So basically what I do is I focus on spiritual formation for the students. So the theology department, they're more of the intellectual side. What is the faith? What is Catholicism? And why do we believe the things we believe? And I'm more of how do we apply that to a personal relationship with Jesus? Right. And that can range from our retreat program to our discipleship program to having a net team here. There's a lot of different facets of how, and it's very individual. Every kid is different. So there's lots of different ways that they can encounter Jesus through campus ministry.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
And I love that you made that distinction too, because as a former theology teacher, right? I mean, it's not as if the theology teachers aren't trying to bridge that gap of the personal relationship with the kids, but there is that kind of personalism that campus ministry has to offer that is so much more deeper than that.
Right. And I think there's definitely a partnership. Like, I'm also answering their questions intellectually. It's cool to see them walk out of a theology class, walk right into my office and say, okay, they just said this, what does that mean? And so there's definitely a partnership, which is really cool. But yeah, I'm definitely more of the personal relationship and what is prayer? What does that look like for you, especially in this culture that they're living in? So yeah.
And I see you around campus, like you have your own kind of mentorship program and discipleship and followers.
Yeah, I have my own followers, my little entourage. But yeah, I love the main passion I have in campus ministry is definitely mentorship, and to kind of explain what that is for everyone. It's basically walking with someone personally one-on-one in their faith. So what that looks like on JSerra campus is me just kind of authentically, very spontaneously forming relationships with students, and then eventually there's trust involved, and then they're talking to me about their life, and then it gets to these deep things. And it's so cool though, because a lot of my relationships that I form are typically they don't start with Jesus. It's not like, I come. Right.
You got the Bible in your pocket.
Hey, I'm going to sit next to you at lunch. Let's talk about Jesus right now, right? Like, it's typically like we meet at a TNL, or I go to a volleyball game or a football game, and I'm meeting people, and then we form a relationship, and then all of a sudden they trust me. Mm-hmm. And then the conversations always lead back to God and big life questions that they have. These kids are seeking so much. So it's just really cool to be able to be that person on campus.
And thanks be to God too that we have people like that at the school, because again, you go back to being a teacher and it's like, okay, I got 5 minutes until next class.
You don't have much time for that.
And especially having that balance of just the mentorship, and even for the young ladies here, the young women, again, my wife having worked in campus ministry, just having somebody that they can really connect with, and you're obviously relatable. So
thanks.
So from what it appears, you've always been passionate about Catholicism and the faith. Maybe
shockingly not.
Maybe you can catch up our viewers on your path, your journey to just what has gotten you to where you're at today.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Ohio, and I grew up in cradle Catholic family. Like, we went to mass. This is the very typical story you hear. Like,
went to Ohio State football games.
All the things, all the Ohio things, but it's the typical cradle Catholic. My family didn't really care a lot about their faith, but we went through the motions, did all the right things. So on the outside, it looks like we're a really great Catholic family, but on the inside, none of us have any personal relationship with Jesus or even honestly know what that means. And so I went to this camp every summer called Damascus. It's Catholic Youth Summer Camp. And I would go for a week. And it was this cool, crazy, like I would rock climb and do all these crazy things. And then at night, we'd have opportunities to encounter Jesus. And I remember very clearly feeling the love of Jesus, like very truthfully. I knew it was an authentic love, but I had no clue how to apply that outside of my life. I had zero formation. So leaving camp, I just went back to living, you know, the normal secular high school lifestyle, like doing what everybody else is doing. And then COVID hit my senior year of high school. And basically the deal was, if you want to go to college, you're going to sit in a dorm alone and do online classes and pay full price. So I was like, maybe I don't want to do that. And I heard of this ministry called NET. It stands for National Evangelization Teams. It's based in Minnesota. And I don't know, I heard it randomly through a friend, and I went to an interview weekend, and I literally was not living a Christian life at all. But I met this woman who was running our retreat, and she was so much like me. It's like me. I was like seeing myself 5 years in the future. Like, wow, she's same sense of humor, same like anxious tendencies. Like I just saw so much of myself in her. Yeah. But the very distinct difference is that she had very consistent joy in her life, and you could see that. And I didn't. Yeah. And I was like, whatever you have, it's so attractive, and I want that. Like, whatever you have, what is it that you have that I don't have? And she showed me like the beauty of having a consistent relationship with Jesus that's not just based in an emotion, right? Like I went to these camps and I would feel all these emotions, but I didn't have any foundation. So the second the feeling went away, so did my relationship with God. And that's extremely similar to all these kids. And why it's so important to have mentorship is they go on these retreats and they're like, wow, that was amazing. I felt something. I felt something different than I never felt before. But if they don't know how to apply it to an actual relationship with God, just like me, it's like, this isn't an actually like a life-changing experience. It's life-changing if you let it change your life. Sure. Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know what stands out to me during that whole spiel was the fact that you recognized something was lacking. You know, it reminds me so much of the story of the rich young man who comes to Jesus and says, hey, I'm really wealthy. I'm a good person. I follow the commandments, but I know something's missing.
Yeah, something's off.
And the fact that you went to this retreat saying, gosh, I'm not fulfilled yet. Like I'm not where I want to be. And then you saw it in this woman and pursued that. Yeah, that's beautiful. So, okay. So you said a lot there. You're in high school at the time.
Yes.
This was your senior year that you went on this NET retreat?
Yeah.
Okay. What happens after that?
So I go on this retreat, meet this woman, realize that, okay, whatever she has, I want. And I got accepted to the ministry to be a missionary for the year. And they send...
whoa, hold on. You just applied to be a netter?
Yeah, I applied. I applied. That was the interview.
That's a big commitment.
Yeah, I know. But so basically they send missionaries all across the country. You don't know where you're going, but they're going to send you. And they said, we're going to go even if COVID, like we're going to do something. We're going to send missionaries out, whether it's even like praying for people.
Right,
like,
right. Let's just quickly pause. Okay, for our viewers out there, a lot of you are probably thinking, okay, hey, wait a second, we missed something. Right. What's NET?
What's NET? Yeah, NET. So NET is a ministry, stands for National Evangelization Teams, and they send missionaries graduate from high school all the way to age 28. Typically, people do it for like a gap year after high school or college, but they send Catholic missionaries ministering to youth, so 6th to 12th grade, all across the country. And most teams that they send out are retreat teams, so they're traveling a route across the country, stopping in a parish, giving a retreat, and then getting in a van and traveling to the next one. Yeah. That wasn't for me. I didn't do that. And then they have stationary teams where they are basically a community is asking for a team of missionaries to come and invest in their community alone for a year. And so I did So a parish or a school, basically, is what that looks like. And so I did 2 years of net. Whenever the Lord really just heard my cry, right? Like he just knew that I needed to go on this interview, and I accepted, and I went, and I did it for 2 years, and it was what really changed my life. Like this ministry, and I think net, something that's really cool about net is they say when we're being trained, we have 5 weeks of training, which is a lot of just spiritual formation and what a relationship with God actually looks like. A lot of the intellect is being formed as well. And I remember the first slide going up on like day one, and it's like, it's not about the ministry, it's about you.
Oh,
and I'm
wow.
like,
You're totally, it's totally the opposite.
What?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm here to help people. Like, it's not about me. And in reality, they're forming 150 young people to go live out authentic Catholic lifestyles.
And people, too, that are all different walks of life, right? It's not like you were, a cradle, or not a cradle, but just somebody that's always been practicing or always reading the Bible. Right.
I remember showing up and meeting people, and I'm like, where am I? What is this place? Like, what am I going to do? Is this really where I'm supposed to be? Yeah. Like, talking to a God I feel like I barely know, and they just changed my life. Like, I had so many great mentors in my 2 years of mission, and what led me to JSerra is JSerra actually has a net team, and so I was on the first team to be sent to JSerra, which is the coolest ministry ever. And the second I came, I knew that I wanted to stay because I love this community so much.
Oh, yeah. But I'm sure it had nothing to do with Orange County.
Nothing to do with Orange County, but I really did. Like, in all sincerity, I love this community. The second I started forming relationships with the women on campus specifically, I just knew that, wow, I want to be there for these kids. Like, I want to partner with God and bring them to his heart and to his kingdom. So it's
funny too, because I remember the first time we kind of met, right? Because the net team came and somebody had passed away, right?
Yeah, I came a week or so late. Yeah.
So I had already gotten to know the net team as a former theology teacher, and then I meet you passing in the hallway, and you're like, "Hey, you're Mr. Abdulla." I was like, "Yeah." Okay, people like you.
Yeah, that's so true. I did. I was trying to like find my footing,
but not to boost my own ego. The point of that was you already had this kind of charisma that I could see in you that the kids were just so naturally drawn to.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
The personality, the ability to communicate and articulate, the faith, and the kids just really drew to that. And I remember it must have been after retreat, but it was one of the first football games.
Yeah,
and
I remember this too.
You basically were crowd surfing. I was like, me, Bella Holsten.
Yeah, I remember that so vividly because you were like, we went over and you were showing me, meeting everybody, and then like we walked to the side and he was like, you were like, I think you should stay here. Like, you think so? I think so too.
Yeah.
So it was just, I mean, literally even in October of my first year, I just knew that the Lord had wanted me to be a part of this community. So
And so what's that transition been like? Going from net, where you're with a team of missionaries, to now kind of spearheading the campus ministry program.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different facets of that question.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, it's been a really cool experience. Very humbling. I think that I came into it having so much support. Obviously, I had 7 people that were like on the same page as me. It's like, we're just like all from the Midwest. Like, what is this kind of thing? Like, all right, here we go. Like, the kids barely even knew what the net team was when I showed up.
So fresh.
And so I like would go up to a kid and I don't know, just cold call, like just sit down with them, and they're like, so who are you going to homecoming with?
Right.
Like, I kind of work here. Like, I don't know. It's just such a experiment. And so getting to be here a second year and now a third year, I just feel like I have my footing now and a lot more confidence in what I'm doing. And the mission for campus ministry is just a lot more solidified for me. Like what I desire for the students and for the incoming net team again, because this is our third one. So,
and what a advantage it is, right? Having served on net and then just kind of being that person that's holding their hand and walking them through and showing them the ropes.
It really is a gift because I I mean, we're on 24/7 as net missionaries. They're going to their host families.
Yeah.
Like, they don't just get to go home. They get to go and minister more, which is beautiful, but it's a lot. So it's cool to see, like, I know how you feel.
Yeah.
Like, I get it.
Right. And I actually do want to talk about this. Host family. You use the word host family there. And this is for our viewers too, of course, in the sense of we do need people to host our net team.
Actually, we really do.
So if you can, please, who do they reach out to for that?
Either myself, you can email me, or you can email Sarah Abdulla, your wife.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it honestly is such a cool experience. Like,
well, that's what I wanted to segue into.
Yeah.
Is like, tell us about, okay, so you're this missionary at the school, and you're trying to get integrated and immersed into the culture of the school, but at the same time, you are staying with the JSerra family and trying to evangelize and cultivate and, yeah, go ahead.
Right. I think it's crazy. It's so cool. I mean, especially coming from the Midwest, the culture is just so different.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not only am I meeting kids with just, it's a little different. Their upbringing is very different from mine. And so getting to see that and then going into their homes and getting to know their whole family is just so interesting to see the whole picture. And it gives, honestly, a better idea for us as missionaries how to best minister to their families and to their kids, right? Like, you get to have, I've had so many really cool conversations with moms about their own faith and what that looks like in their life and how they can help their own kids, and even just a family getting to pray as a family and praying with them as a family. And so it's just really a well-rounded ministry because it's not just like the kids are sharing, but I get to see into all aspects of what it looks like.
Wow, yeah, I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
That is very interesting, right? Yeah, you're seeing their walk of life at school, you're joining them at their house, you're getting to really be a part of their family.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, that's impactful. Okay, so having said all of that and going through now into your third year, give some of our listeners or viewers some glory stories. Like, where are the fruits of not only net but just your ministry in general?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many I could choose from, but there's a few in particular that always stick out to me, and I think that it's really cool because they're all a little different because the kids are so different. Like, some of them, it's like, okay, I really need to get this kid on retreat. Like, they need to just, like, go on retreat and understand, like, and see and encounter Jesus before we go anywhere spiritually. And then there's other kids who, like, walk up to me in the quad and are like, what the heck is the Trinity? Like, explain that to me. And I'm like, oh, hi, I'm Bella. Nice to meet you, too. Let's go have lunch. But there's one in particular that I always think about it just is so close to my heart. I actually just talked to her right before this, but I met her at a lunch table when I was a missionary, so 2.5 years ago. She was a transfer, and I sat down next to her and we start talking, and she's like, this is so weird. I'm not baptized. I've never done anything religious. My family's not religious. What the heck is this? I'm in my sophomore year, so she's learning, like, very deeply into scripture. She's like, what the heck is this? Like, I'm so confused because I'm new to this. I'm coming halfway through the year.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, do you want to meet? And let's talk about it. Like, let's just start from square one. And so literally our first meeting, she was like, I don't even think I believe in God. And so from that moment in her sophomore year, we have now transitioned from talking about Aquinas's 5 proofs of God's existence. Like, okay, like, let's see if he exists. And now let's see if he's relational. And now let's talk about Jesus. And now let's talk about that. Like, we just kept growing, and she's never been on a retreat. And she's thinking about RCIA this year.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so it's just so cool.
Right.
Like, you just see how powerful relationship is. Like, just the Lord allowing me to be so consistent with her and her just having this desire for something more in her life. And there's been times where we, like, have to back up a little bit, or there's something that is personal that we have to talk about, but it's just getting to walk with her, like, actually in her faith, where it's literally just, I'm going to teach you how to pray, and then we're going to talk about this thing or this, and why do we not believe this, or why do we believe this certain thing about our faith, and now it's like, okay, now I'm at the point where I think I want to, like, get baptized, and none of that happened through this, like, emotional experience of a retreat. Like there's so many different ways that these kids just desire more. And that's literally this girl who's now a senior is now like thinking of these really awesome things simply because of conversation.
Wow.
And that's just so cool to me.
That's so beautiful. And it's so fitting when somebody's mind and heart unify, right? And that, I think, you know, it's funny to talk strategy when you talk about evangelizing, right?
But there is in some ways. Yeah.
But there really is.
Yeah.
And that just seems like you took on this strategy with this person, and it was, okay, here's these intellectual obstacles and things that we need to discuss. And simultaneously, you're loved, and I'm going to love you no matter what. Gosh, I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, challenges. I'm thinking, right? Like,
yeah, let's get into that.
Because the glory,
How
the
much
highlight
time do
reels.
you have?
It's so funny. You know, you play sports, and you send all these colleges your highlight reel, and then all the coaches are like, "Okay, coach, tell me what this guy's really like."
Yeah,
right?
seriously.
So, what are some of the challenges you face? And I'm sure you'll touch upon this, but challenges that you face not only with the kids growing closer to God, but even the culture that we live in today, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, this culture, I mean, I'm not super far removed from it. I am only about 4 years out of high school.
Sure.
So it's actually kind of a gift for me to say, like, yeah, I listen to the same music as you, and I do the same things that, like, I experience the same type of, like, social media becoming really big and all of those different things. It's very similar. But I'm seeing it obviously in a different lens now than they are.
Right.
And then I guess maybe you would say more of a negative lens. I think this culture is just so quick, especially in California. Everything is so fast paced, and it's just go, like do. Even in host families, it's like, and I appreciate it, but it's like they're like, okay, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And like Midwest is like, what do you want to talk about? Like, what do you want to talk about? Like, we're all just sitting in the living room, like, what do you want to talk about?
It's so funny because I definitely my family is from Ohio, and I totally get that.
It's like, what do you mean? What do you want to do? I want to sit here on this couch and let's like have a deep conversation. I don't know. So it's very interesting the differences. So these kids are growing up in this ultra fast, like very instant gratification.
Stimulated.
Everything is a stimulation. And so it's like, how am I combating with like their hours and hours and hours of screen time?
Yeah.
Where it's like, what I thought initially, like, I would love to do a psychological, analysis on this, but I've always thought like, okay, the biggest influences in your life, whether they're negative or positive, are your parents, your mom and dad. But now that they're spending 10 plus hours on their phone, on TikTok, social media, who is their actual biggest influence?
Oh, yeah.
You know, like there's definitely a difference now of like when I was growing up, it was like, yeah, whether negative or positive, like my parents, that's what mattered most. But then moving into high school, it was like, no, like what do these people think of me? Or like what do the people around me think of me?
Or what are these people saying to me?
Yeah,
right?
saying about me. It's like these kids, the hardest obstacle for them is identity. Like that's where most of my conversations start and honestly end, is like, who are you and how do you define yourself? Because they think it's like their academic validation, whether they're starting varsity or sitting on the bench, whether they got an F or an A or they got a date to prom, and it seems like all these superficial things, but deep down that's what's defining them.
These external labels.
Yeah, these external labels, and it seems so cliche, but it's so true, and I see it so in men and women.
I was just gonna say, I mean, it's easy to fall into that trap, right?
Yeah. So I think that's honestly my biggest challenge, is kind of helping them like snap out of that, of like, okay, so what your worth doesn't change if you got a C or an A. Like, yeah, okay, your grades are important and your sport is important, your friends are important, but just because something negative happened doesn't mean that you're worthless.
Yeah.
And I say that, and that might sound dramatic, like they think that, but they really honestly do.
Yeah.
And so it's just so important, especially as a staff and community, for us to be rooted in our identities and to be like exemplifying that, because I think that that's part of the success of campus ministry, is they see 8 missionaries, 18, 19, 20 years old, so not even far removed from their age, and they see them and they're like, why the heck would you give up college to
Yeah.
come be with me
Right.
just to hang out and go on a retreat with me? Why would you do that? There's something so powerful just about their testimony of like, yeah, throw ketchup at me at the bistro, like whatever you want to do. Like, I don't care. I'm living my identity very specifically for God.
Yeah.
And it like, you can think all you want. And these kids so often will come to me and are like, why did they do this? Like, why are you here? Like, why aren't you in college? Like, why aren't you doing these things that everybody else is going and doing? It's like, because I know who I am and I know that the Lord's called me here.
Yeah.
And that's what I want for these kids.
And that's where it's at, right? I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, too, for everybody, not only you and I, the community of JSerra, but the community of the world, it really comes down to witness, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you can talk the talk, but until you walk the walk, I mean, that's what really kind of puts people, it kind of jars people a little bit, right? And like the lady that you spoke about earlier, right? There's something about her. They're like, wait, hold on. There's something unique about this person.
Right.
So it's really good to have those witnesses for our kids. Okay, so is there any kind of, I know we've identified the problem. What's the strategy behind this now? Where do we go from here? How do we get these kids more, I guess, plugged into the present moment? Would you say?
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I'm having conversations with them, I think these kids are really, really smart and they have a desire to be happy, but they never even ask themselves if they are happy. Like no one, I think, maybe it's just not common anymore in our culture to just go to a deeper place of conversation or whatever it is. I think it's less common. It's very like, we're all perfect and great and like I have it all together. Like the world of social media, but it's like I'm seeing this highlight reel mentality come into real life. It's like I can't even show it has to be perfect all the time. I have to have it together. And so these kids are living that internally. And I think that as I'm going into these conversations with them, it's so funny. I've said this to a few kids this year. I'm like, go home and don't drive with music. And just ask yourself, am I happy? Am I like really content with the life that I'm living right now? Am I content with who I am? And they're like, no, I cannot go 5 minutes without, and it's like, no, like, and then they do it and they're like, wow, I like taking them to a deeper place, allowing them to see that like they have minds that are desiring so much more than they're thinking they deserve.
Right, which I think right away, that's principle number one.
Yeah.
Time to reflect, right? Have some time where it's quiet around you. We're conditioned with noise. Right. You got TV, you got school, all these things. And noise doesn't necessarily have to be, music. It can just be busyness.
Right.
So principle number one, maybe for our kids or our students here is have some time to reflect.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do we build from there?
I think that once they've recognized that there's something lacking in their life, like I say to all the students that I'm mentoring, I'm not going to mentor you if you're not praying. There's no purpose of me to be talking with you and having these conversations, even if you're not even fully living it out. Right. Like that's okay. Like I still love you, support you. I've been there, and it's okay. But it's like it doesn't have to be all or nothing right away. But I do want you to be in relationship with God. I think prayer really intimidates people. I think they're gonna how do I do it? What does it look like? Am I hearing God's voice? Like I don't hear a booming guy voice in my head all the time. Like that doesn't mean that you don't know Jesus or he's speaking to you. So it's like simply, I mean, it's so funny how many times there's just been aha moments of me being like, Jesus will speak to you like through your conscience. Like it's your voice. Like, so if you ask him a question and you hear an answer that's good, true, and beautiful, then it's him. You can trust that it's him. And they're like, what? I've been waiting for this like man voice to come out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so simple. but I think just like breaking it down for them and them realizing that it's a relationship. It's simpler than what they're thinking. Yeah. Like they're all like, I don't want to be a boring like Catholic. I'm like, no, just pray.
No, look at me.
Look at me. I'm so cool. Like, look how cool I am. But yeah, I think it's first like allowing them to reflect on where they're at in their life and what they desire, and then kind of leading them towards what does a relationship with God look like, and that always starts with prayer. So
yeah. Okay. Is there any final step or principle or something else you would add to that, or do you just kind of?
I mean, honestly, every person is so different.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think that like for the example I was talking about where our relationship was purely conversation, she didn't need to go on a retreat. Like sometimes there's kids that I know need to go experience something to like feel the Lord's love like very tangibly in order to like move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Or like there's just always, and they're all so different and so unique, and so it's like my conversation and where I head and in mentorship is always very different.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Any advice for? I'm just thinking, as a new parent, always looking for advice.
Yes, ask me advice. Yes, I have all the answers.
What would you tell a parent how to? I mean, I sit down with a lot of the parents. In fact, as a school relations coordinator, I sit down with almost all of the incoming freshman families. And the funniest thing is how not all parents admit this, but most parents are like, hey, whatever I tell my kid, he does the opposite.
What do I do?
Right. What's some tips to our parents on how to guide their kids to a deeper relationship with God?
Yeah.
You have that experience of
Right.
living in the house and
Right. I'm actually really fascinated by like parent ministry and parents also being involved, because again, like you're influential in your kid's life. Like whether it's negative or positive, you matter. Your opinion and your everything matters to your kid, whether you're thinking they're listening or not. They are. They are listening. I know that they're listening because I know. And so I would say I read a book once about the role of the father actually is super important, and how when a father prays with his kids, like just says a short prayer at night, the statistics of those kids who their father prayed with them when they were growing up, they have an 80% chance higher of being a practicing Catholic or Christian leaving their family's home.
Wow.
When it becomes more of a going through the motions, like, yeah, we're going to mass, but like,
we have to.
Right? Like the kids, yeah, we're going.
The Packers play at 12.
Yeah, like we gotta go at 10. Like, yeah, like it's like when you make it seem like you're going through the motions, they're following your lead. So if you're making like vulnerability is not like a state of weakness as a parent, right? Like being vulnerable with your kids about like, actually, I really do care about my relationship with God, or I want to learn more about my relationship with God and I want to help you, right? Like just even being open with your kids about how you feel about God is going to change everything. Like the statistics speak. Like it just makes so much sense that if my dad prays with me, like can you imagine like your dad like sitting down and saying like, can we say a prayer? I'd be
my gosh.
Wait, what? Like why? Like it's so intriguing. Even if they don't respond, like get off me. Like no, we're not praying right now. It's so dumb. Like they are thinking about that, and I can promise you they'll come in and tell me.
or imagine too, which is that makes you credible. Imagine too, just in the car on the way to the game, right? Hey, let's say a quick prayer before you go out there and play. I mean that's beautiful and powerful.
It is.
Okay, as we kind of wrap up. What are some, again, now we're going to speak to the general audience here. What are some key takeaways or things that you have learned in life that have helped you grow closer to God, right? You mentioned a book that you read. What are some real practical things that we all can do to get closer to God? Yeah.
I think moving back a little bit in my testimony, I went very strongly from one end, like thinking God was all about feeling. All about an emotion, feeling good. Like that's all we want as humans, right? We jump out of a plane because we're seeking adrenaline. We fall in love because we want to feel someone close, right? Like we're all chasing feelings. And so when I realized like there's more to my faith than how it makes me feel, that's when I was actually living a consistent like life with Jesus, is when I realized like, wow, there are answers to my questions. That like if you're a Catholic and you have not read the catechism or read parts of the catechism, I really strongly encourage you to. Because even about prayer, like I was going to write a talk about prayer, and I was like, what am I going to say? I don't know. It's such a broad topic. And I opened, I was like, all right, let's go straight to the church. And I open it. It's like the most beautiful writing I've ever, my whole talk is on like one paragraph.
I love it.
And so I think it's a lot simpler than I think we let it be. We like to complicate God of like, okay, like it's a part of my life. Like, no, if you don't pray, you don't have a relationship with God, and it's meant to be everything to you. And that doesn't mean like I sit in my room and I pray alone all day, right? Like I have a life, but that God is always in every aspect of my life. So when I get in the car, He's the center. And so even in the mundane, like I'm answering emails, I'm asking God to like be with me in those little things. So it's like there's so many facets of like, if you have questions, your questions have answers. And I would invite you to ask those questions. Just type it into Google, like Catholic or Christian, and then put your question or whatever's holding you back, right? Or having a mentor, like just because your kids have mentors, like we have over 200 kids in mentorship right now. You can have a mentor too. Yeah. Like find someone to talk about faith with that you trust, because I know that I could not do it alone. Like I could not, like the net team being here and having support Catholic community is so important.
Yeah, so that principle that comes to my mind is you can't give what you don't have.
Right.
Right. I can't give my kids the Ferrari that they want. Right. Because I don't
have one. I don't have one.
but the idea of, okay, look, you want to be able to talk about prayer. You want to be able to have these deeper conversations with your kids. We have to go to the source, right? We have to start praying, and we have to start kind of looking and diving deeper into whatever our faith is, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, geez, thanks, Bella. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Tune in next time, folks, for our next episode on Beyond the Main. This is Bella Holsten and Russ Abdulla.